Hi everyone. So in today's short video, we're going to cover a snapshot of the engagement that we've had across the Childline Vision program today. And particularly one of the most exciting things for me personally is what young people are actually telling us. So we kicked off the Vision program in July last year, so 8 months ago now, and I'm really, really pleased to say that one of the things that we did really well was just commit to not rushing to make any changes, but to actually just listen to people. So we started with a really, really blank slate, and just wanted to hear ideas from everybody on the ground about how they think we could take the service from where it is already, which is a fantastic place, and make Childline even better. So we worked with staff, with volunteers, with young people themselves, and with external partners to build this kind of picture of what Childline could and should look like over the next 7 years. And this slide here just represents a key snapshot of some of the engagement that we've been able to do to date. So we've actually been able to work with over 1,000 young people and hear their voices. And I'm going to play back some of the key themes just on the next slide. What we've really tried to paint out is just a snapshot of the 4 or 5 key themes. So if you remember back to when we first started the Vision program, we identified there were 3 core groups of young people that were using the Childline service. So we had the young people coming through on a one-off or a very infrequent basis, and they represented up to 90% of the young people that came through to the service. We also had the young people who came through very, very regularly. So they represented only 10% of all of our kind of users and individual children, but they also made up to half of our demand across voice chat and PIP. So they used us very, very regularly. And then we also had our third group of young people who were the young people that exclusively used us overnight. So when they did choose to use the service, they would never come through in the daytime. It'd always be in that kind of midnight to 7:30 a.m. period. And what we can see here is that actually some of this feedback like directly ties to some of those user groups. So for instance, one of the core bits of feedback we got from young people who use us regularly was there was a really strong desire for us to just be more consistent for them. So young people talked a lot about feedback around things often feeling quite repetitive, or the kind of struggle with having to talk to lots of different counsellors all the time who didn't really know them. And there's also things on us as a service about how clear we're being about whether you can refer back to previous notes in the way that you talk to a young person, etc. But lots of feedback about, for instance, I've had to say my name to you like 10,000 times now. And one of the things that you'll see is there's a separate video which will be linked as part of all the Childline Vision program stuff around different ways that we could work with those young people who come through to us regularly. And at its absolute core, it's just about being more consistent. It's not about being a different Childline or being specialist or using a different counselling model or different confidentiality policy. It's about still operating as Childline with all the things that make Childline brilliant, but just in a way that means that we can give those young people more consistency, working with counsellors that better know those young people, better know their kind of situation, and so therefore can give them that more consistent response. And that's it, kind of thing. That is that idea in a nutshell. So you might have heard it talked about as Childline Universal and Childline Connect. And if you haven't, I'd really encourage you to go watch the specific video that talks about that idea, because it absolutely speaks to the feedback that we get from those young people who are using us more regularly and crying out for that consistency. That idea actually also talks to the other bit of feedback we had from young people who use us on the kind of one-off or infrequent basis. And that's just about our wait times. And I think this is really unsurprising. We had lots of feedback of this over the year, particularly around our chat wait times. But also you'll see one of the quotes here is from a young person who was a night service user. And I think it's really important to hold in mind that when we talk about kind of wait times and our availability, we're not just talking about young people kind of sat at home safe at where they can just kind of hang on. Like this young person here is talking about trying to get through to our night service when they're sat outside next to a shop and it's like midnight. And so I think what they were looking for from us is yes, obviously one way is to kind of make sure that we have as many counsellors as possible as we can through the entire day. but they were also interested in other kind of ways to reach Childline that just genuinely avoided needing to queue. So one of the things we've seen in the service over the years is our chat demand in general dropping year on year. So and this was before COVID. So over about the last 5 years, our demand for chat has gone down and down. And actually, young people are feeding back that, yeah, chat is okay and all, but it's something where I have to log on, go to the website, create an account, and then wait in a queue, like keep that browser window open and wait in a queue. And then I have to talk to a counter and then wait for the response. And they don't want to do that. Actually, 80% of the young people in Childline really just wanted the basic ability to text us, to be able to send a message and then to carry on with the other 20 things that are going on in their head at any one time, and then get the response and then respond back to that. And that's a really interesting kind of concept for us to think about as a service in how we might take that forward over the coming years. And likewise, over half the young people that we spoke to wanted some sort of messaging experience over social media. So, and what's really interesting about that point is it speaks to us as a service needing to think about meeting young people where they are rather than asking them to come to us. Um, it doesn't mean that that's definitely something the service will just jump on straight away or in year kind of like 2, 3, 4, etc. Because there's lots we need to think about behind that. So you can see, for instance, one young person was talking about WhatsApp, but there's all sorts of considerations we need to think about how we keep things the safest for us, for our staff, for our volunteers, and also young people in kind of wherever we go, and also the security of their data, because ultimately what they are choosing to share with us is their secrets, and we need to make sure in however we offer them choice to contact us, we are protecting those secrets. But also, I think what I'd like to call out when we think about other ways to avoid a queue, young people are also really interested in, well, could I arrange for Childline to call me? And historically, as a service, we've always been like, no, we absolutely wouldn't ever do that. We don't make kind of outbound calls to children, young people. But some of the interesting feedback we had from our partner organisations and other helplines was that is particularly the way they work, especially with the young people that they have who come through regularly. They actually arrange to call them, and young people love it because they don't have to queue. And they don't have that kind of awkward experience of coming through to someone and then having to get transferred and all that, right? And that could take away mess for us as a service as well. So I think that's a really interesting concept for us to think about. And likewise, a large number of young people were also interested in being able to schedule appointments just in general. So there's lots and lots of food for thought out there, but the core thing is they want to reduce the ability to wait, and generally in terms of the choice of how they reach out to the service, anything that avoids a queue is going to come up top trumps. Another thing that was really interesting when we think about kind of reach and EDI and accessibility of our services is there was a real interest in speaking to Childline in other languages. So a small number of young people directly said that for them personally, it would be great to speak to Childline in other languages. And we've got a snapshot over there. And we already know, for instance, with our kind of Welsh language, that we already have a work stream looking at how we strengthen our Welsh offer because we have a duty to be able to provide a service in the Welsh language. But young people wanted us to also go beyond that as well and think about other languages: Ukrainian, Japanese, French, Urdu, Turkish, etc. And I think it'd be really interesting if we kind of started in the vision with a kind of statement of, by 2032, we'd like to be able to say that for any young person, regardless of their first language, they could come through and contact Childline. And we'd need to think about what technology would support that, how that would work, etc. But that could be one of the ambitions that we take forward. And what was really interesting when we spoke to young people about this in our school workshops, where they were saying, do you know what? Even if I don't personally need to speak to Childline in any other language than English, I would want it for my friends or my peers or just for other children in general. It was something they thought was almost like a moral obligation of Childline to invest in for the benefit of other children. And then the final point was actually to do with our confidentiality promise and kind of secondary school visibility. So we surveyed young people on the website, we asked them stuff on message boards and live message board threads, and we worked with young people directly through some workshops. And all of them on face value said they understand our confidentiality promise. We gave it to them and they said, yep, that totally makes sense. When we were able to probe a little bit further, though, in our secondary school workshops and primary school workshops, it was very apparent that when we tested this through different scenarios, young people didn't understand our confidentiality promise. And what we've really taken from that is that there's a lot of language in there that's still too adult. So things like position of trust, there's parts that refer to kind of legal responsibility, which young people just automatically equate to kind of you're going to have to tell the police, etc. Um, there's still much more work that we can do to make that confidentiality promise really child friendly. And so we don't have to wait for vision for that. That's already a work stream that Kieran, one of our service heads in Childline's SMT, is now taking forward with a number of other people from the service to look at how we better frame our language and make it clearer for young people. And then finally, they also really wanted us to do more promotion in secondary schools. And that kind of comes down to two things. One, that's about us as a service being in a place where we are ready to kind of promote into secondary schools, and that will come into, you'll see that talked more about in the videos where we set out our vision for the next 7 years and how we want to grow the service, because part of that is about being in a place where we really can achieve long-term sustainable growth. And the other thing for us to think about is, again, not reinventing the wheel, but looking at other parts of the organization. So our school service or other teams that are getting out there with children and young people, and thinking about how can we actually organize ourselves so particularly staff are really interested in being able to create more participation opportunities. So actually, how can we do things like that? How can we build that in so that it's a regular part of Childline's approach to developing its service, engaging with children and young people, and actually seeking their feedback? Because we managed to reach 1,000 young people in about 3 months of Childline Vision. That was a dip in the water of the possibilities out there, and so the opportunity is now with us to really amplify that. So I hope this is a really useful snapshot just about the engagement that we've had so far, and particularly a window into young people's feedback. And please do watch the other videos if you want more context on what the Childline Vision is, what the kind of core themes that we took from, all the feedback that we've had to date, and also some of the key discussion points coming up over May and June. Thank you very much, and take care.